is Dave Arnold, your host of Cooking Issues, coming to you live from the heart of Manhattan, Rockefeller Center, New York City, Newsstand Studios, joined as usual with John behind me. How you doing, John?
Doing great, thanks.
You're back. You missed last week, I think, but it was because it was on the wrong day, yeah?
Yes, yeah, unfortunately couldn't be there.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going, yeah.
Yeah?
Same old.
Still sucking in wind, as they say?
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah, I know, right? Why? Got Joe Hazen rocking the panels. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Welcome, everybody. We got a full house.
Yeah, almost. We do not yet, in the upper left-hand corner, have Quinn, but we hope to get him later on in the program. He's feeling a little bit under the weather, but we do have Jackie Molecules. How you doing?
Yeah, been better.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. And, of course, not least, back from just got back in L.A. last night, Nastasia the Hammer Lopez. How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah. All right. And today's special guest, first time on the show, is Osayi Endolyn. Let me see. How do you like to describe yourself? You first came to my attention because you wrote the quotes for the legacy quilt for the Museum of Food's exhibition, but you also wrote a book called Rise with Marcus Samuelson, and Black Power Kitchen with the Ghetto Gastro crew, and you have another book coming up. You're all over the place doing everything all the time.
I like to call myself a storyteller, but oftentimes that just probes more questions. Right. So, writer still works, but I think also cultural strategist has been a term that I kind of made up.
Right.
That encompasses a lot of the work I do that isn't always public facing, but is public impacting.
See, in my life, storyteller is a liar. I'm kidding. I'm just messing around.
Yeah, but I think
stories.
That there is some truth to that, even, on the spectrum of storyteller to griot, but also someone who can pull together threads from different places and keep a common narrative going,
Nice. All right. Well, this the beginning of the show is the portion where we kind of shoot the breeze over whatever happened in the past week or so, ever since the last time we spoke to each other, which for us would be almost infinity. I did see you at John's Friends and Family a while back. Did you have a good time?
I'm going to
put you on the spot.
I love. This is also something we could talk about in regards to having criticality around food, but you can't pay me to like something, right? So I love Jean's food and the interpretation that he's bringing to the wine bar. I think my favorite are the veal croquettes.
Yeah, a little bit of bone. Thank you.
Yes.
No, it's great having you both over. So I appreciate you coming in every time you're there.
I ate very well.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So what do you? I know Jack's got something just happened, fresh in, not food related, but go.
Yeah, car broken into in my own driveway. Yeah, so it's obviously not funny. It's just a weird. I hate the feeling of just somebody going through things.
Well, hold on. But
not knowing sort of.
We need the details. Smash window, not smash window. Pop trunk, not pop trunk.
Popped trunk.
Okay.
Trunk is popped. Things are on the floor outside of the trunk. So some of my camping stuff's been taken apart. At a quick glance, and I don't know, I've done a full inventory, right? But here's the sort of funny thing. I don't see anything major that's been taken, except I had a box in the trunk that was the Apple Studio monitor box. No monitor in the box. That's gone. So
did they just need a box?
Ran off with an empty. No, I think they didn't look in the box, and they probably thought, "Oh wow, a brand new monitor," and ran off with it.
But it doesn't weigh as much.
Funny.
I mean, unless they're completely stoned, the box doesn't weigh as much as a box with a monitor.
I'm thinking,
listen, people who steal things, no matter what, they steal things usually for a purpose. Nobody steals things for no reason. I mean, kids do that. But you know what I mean? But adults typically steal things for a reason. It seems weird that they would not know.
I mean, the funny thing is that box was just taking up space in my trunk. It was kind of annoying. I had meant to throw it out.
Are you going to fix the trunk lock? Or are you going to use a screwdriver for the rest of your life?
No, I mean, I'm wondering if it was me that left it unlocked, because I can't imagine how else they would have gotten in.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. But that's how that happened about 1 minute before Joe called me for the show.
Nice.
So that's fun.
Well, it's weird. I wouldn't even know how to break into a modern car. You know what I mean? Back when I used to worry about that stuff, you could literally just break into a car with a screwdriver, a piece of metal. You know what I mean? Pop the lock out of the trunk.
Yeah, totally.
Because it used to happen to us every night. Any night. So I just stopped replacing the locks because I had out-of-state. I was stupid enough to move into the city in the early 90s with out-of-state plates without doing the street parking. And every single night, trunk lock pop. I'm like, nope. No, I'm done. I just left it open. I'm like, hey, look it. Take it. You know, hell, I'll put my garbage in there. Take it. You know what I mean? Take it. It's yours. And anyway, sorry about that. Hopefully they didn't damage the car too much. Because that's when someone breaks the window, that sucks. Because then now you're cardboard and duct tape man. You don't want to be cardboard and duct tape man. You know what I mean?
No one does.
No one does. I've been there too. You don't want to be that
very
guy.
Quick, another quick announcement, Dave, that I want to make. Just for our listeners, our Patreon listeners, the Discord has been reset up. There's now a
what does that mean? Was there a problem? Did we get hacked?
There was a backdoor. Nope. There was a backdoor way in which non-Patreon subscribers could be on the Discord. So we've tightened that up. And so now, instructions have been posted on Patreon. And if you cannot get access to the Discord, feel free to message us. And there is a channel on the Discord that you can sort of post for troubleshooting and how to get the connection working. But just in case anybody missed that memo, be sure to reconnect to your Discord access through Patreon.
Nice. You know what? You sound sad, like your car was broken into and you feel violated. I'm sorry for that. You do sound a little bit sad. You don't sound your usual Jackie Molecule self. You know what I mean?
It's a bummer, man.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah. It sucks.
My God.
Stas, do you have any stories from you were away for, better part of a week in another country? Do you have any food stories to share with us? Or did you eat nothing but pablum the entire time you were gone?
I can't share any of the food stories, but I went to Night on Earth last night, and the cocktails were still good.
Nice. Like the food is secret? What'd you eat, human? Is this like when Jack went to Is this when Jack went to Japan, came back and ate whale, and we never let him forget it?
No.
All right. Okay. What about you, Osayi? You got anything over the past week or so, food-wise?
The past
Can be 2 weeks, can be infinity. It's recent.
Oh, man. I have trouble thinking about yesterday. I mean, just yesterday, I went to a kind of a cool event that was featuring Wagyu.
Oh, yeah? Like in what way featuring?
So this brand out of Australia called West Home. I've just been introduced to it. And, they had this event where they had the chefs from Kasama, from Servos and Eel Bar, and Saga cooking with this meat. So...
Was it stand-up or was it real proper?
It was all standing.
But it was still good even though standing? Standing is never the same. I never judge someone based on what they can cook. I mean, we all cook standing up. You know what I mean, though, serving in that way.
But for these chefs, I mean, that was the real draw for me. I was like, say less. And I was in there.
How was the meat?
It was delicious. I mean, if you're going to be eating meat, I love, it was amazing. I have no notes. That was just last night.
Nice.
I also had some beautiful tamales from a small kind of, I don't know if it's permanent, but it's up in Bushwick, and these various vendors come and they've got tacos, they've got esquite, they've got all kinds of stuff, atole and tamales. And the first time I went, they'd sold out of tamales. So I was very sad. This time I was early enough.
And what's your feeling? And, Nastasia can weigh in here. She has very strong feelings. Well, what is your feeling on the masa to filling ratio in a tamale? Or are you agnostic and it depends on the person making it?
I think it's very practitioner based. I feel like I'm not in charge of dictating people's tamales. So, but these were hefty, as I think most tamales should be. There was one that was mole chicken. There was like a verde, and then there was one that had nopales. And it was I was just so happy to be having tamales.
The last 3 times I've cooked nopales, I haven't been happy. I've cooked for years. I've always been happy. And the last 3 times, I've lost the touch. It happened with mustard seeds, too. I used to pressure cook mustard seeds all the time, and then I lost the touch. I got to get the touch back. I don't know what it is.
I get very moved when I see tamales, because even down to just tying the corn husk around, the preparation, to me, is just such an act of labor and intentionality. Like, someone did this for me.
So no one's left hanging, in case they haven't heard her say as many times. Stas, what's your ideal tamale?
A lot of filling, like not much masa. Like I want it to be like the masa is like, the masa is almost like transparent where you can see all the shit you're going to get inside of it.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Nastasia has a very, yeah. I mean, she's always been this way. This is not like a Nastasia come lately opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
These tamales were not that, but I do understand that tamale.
Yeah.
Nobody's are. Nobody's are because they're cheap with the meat and everyone's used to a lot of masa and everyone accepts it and they're like, oh, wow, these are good. But no, they're not.
Hey, Stas, give me some cheapest meat. Give me some cheapest meat.
No, you do it.
No,
I cannot.
We're making fun of our old partner who at a museum food event got bent at a chef. I've said this story many times. He got bent at a chef because he thought he ordered every lamb rack on the Eastern Seaboard, when in fact the chef had ordered a reasonable amount of lamb racks for the number of people who were coming to the event.
Okay.
And he got mad because he's like, he wants these fantastic lamb, but he always buys the cheapest meat for his restaurant. And that's what, so whenever Nastasia says that they're being cheap with the meat, in my head, I got the cheapest meat going on in my head. You know what I mean? Stas, was that accurate or inaccurate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Very accurate.
That's a deep cut joke for y'all.
Well, but it's like here's something about restaurants. About restaurants, everyone weigh in on this. This is something that I've meant to talk about for the past infinity on this show, and we never get around to it. When you go, with very few exceptions of restaurants, when you go into a restaurant, like the guest side of the restaurant, I'm talking fine dining, even not fine dining, the guest side of the restaurant's about kind of hospitality, right? Trying to make you feel good when you come in.
Sure.
And you really see how we feel about people when you go to the back of house.
Oh, for
how
sure.
we treat ourselves.
For sure.
It's like we put up with stuff no human should put up with in the back of house. You know what I mean?
It's revolting. No, I mean, especially when you think about the care and investment that comes into these spaces and just the awe that can overwhelm you sometimes walking into these rooms. And, the downstairs or the back is literally like your seventh grade locker room was better.
Yeah. Squalor. Intense heat. By the way, for no reason. Right?
Yeah. Terrible air circulation.
Yeah.
Terrible lighting.
Yeah. Just terrible lighting.
Low ceilings.
Low ceilings.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's like a cave.
It's the worst. Yeah. This is why there is nothing. It's not true. I'm sure there are many, many things. Many things. But in my work experience, there's nothing worse than the standard restaurant office. It is the saddest place on earth. And even like stepping into one, I can get no work done.
It looks to me, they look like what a control tower in a prison looks like.
Yeah.
Literally. It's like there's
sometimes with the screens and everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Kill that person in the back.
It's a weird mentality that puts so little effort. But I think that reflects a lot of issues that are persistent in hospitality.
Yeah, I mean, when Nastasia and I worked at the French Culinary Institute, we literally worked in a trash closet, like quite literally in a trash closet. And that was still somehow, I think, better because I could open the door and there was light. I could open the door and see a room in which sun hit the room. Whereas most restaurant offices, you have to open like 3 doors and go down a hallway to see like even like the tiniest shaft of any sort of like light. It's the craziest thing in the world.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is.
And it's like
makes me sad.
And the other thing is like, especially like on the prep side, it's usually, because they're not even often. We need to use every square inch of a restaurant, right? Because they charge so much, right?
100%.
So if there is a basement, guess what? It's getting used. And even though we're not allowed to do prep down there, John, what's going to happen?
Prep.
Yeah, and so like some poor, sorry, sad sack has to be down in that basement for hours and hours.
I know, their whole day.
For the heat.
5 days a week.
Oh, man.
It takes a special dedication to make beautiful things in a hole. It really does.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, like when you're out of it for a while, and then you go back in, and you're like, oh, I forgot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ugh.
It literally coming up for air has new meaning.
Yeah, it's nasty. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring it up. That I'm sure it's going to ring. We have a lot of people who work in the business listen. So I don't mean to offend any of you with your back of houses. I'm sure your back of house, whoever you are, is great. I have been to places where the back of house is great. I've been to places where it's so nice, it's also kind of oppressive in a way because it's like a control situation. You know what I mean? But
I can see
I would prefer that.
Yeah.
Like nice light. I literally can't work in the dark anymore. Like for the past 10 years, I can't
Yeah,
really
we're in
see.
a fishbowl, literally.
Yeah, well, here, no, but I mean, like, I can't physically see. I need like lights with me at all times and stuff like that. Any hoo-ha. I got some food stuff. You want to hear some food stuff?
Lay it on us.
Okay, first of all, sorry, what are your feelings on popcorn? Are you like most people in that you enjoy popcorn?
I love popcorn.
Yeah.
I make my own popcorn.
Oh, nice. Stas, what about you? Popcorn or not popcorn? I never asked you this question.
Yeah, I like popcorn.
All right. So I have a Whirly Pop. I've had a Whirly Pop for a long time. I originally bought a Whirly Pop for coffee, strangely, but I now have. Then I had to buy one for popcorn because my kids wanted popcorn. Some Whirly Pop. Get this. I'm not going to call out my sister Miley Carpenter, who now runs all of her like food and lifestyle magazines, but like started the Food Network magazine and is a James Beard Award-winning author. I'm not going to call Miley out, but Miley, when she makes popcorn, puts it into like an all-clad like a stock pot, right?
Yeah.
No stirring, no shaking. Just turns it on, gives it one shackada, and then leaves it, and it pops up to the top and pops the lid off. She's like, I told you I didn't need to shake it. I'm like, Miley, I can't go there with you. I can't go there with you. I need to agitate that. I can't go there with you. You know what I mean?
I'm a Dutch oven person. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
do,
shake,
I
shake,
do
shake.
do some shake and bake. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
But I think I just like the ritual. It makes me feel like I'm doing something.
right. Well, also I mean, with a Dutch oven, especially, are you gas or you're gas, right? Gas
Yeah,
or
yeah.
So like, they're until they're hot, they're relatively uneven. You need to shake that thing because it's cast iron. You
But
know
I
what
do
mean?
I do try to let it. But this is the thing, like. This is the discipline, because a lot of times when you want popcorn, you want it right then. You don't want to wait 20, 30 minutes for popcorn.
Yeah.
So, but I do try to pre-anticipate my popcorn cravings by heating the Dutch oven so it's fully evenly heated before I add the oil. And
Right. Well, wait, but again, like, popcorn is a right now situation.
I know.
However, I will say this. New York City, we don't have the best weather really for anything, really. But in the wintertime, it's dry, which is why my entire skin is one big scratch mark at this point, because it's dry as
we're
hell.
all like borderline eczema patients.
Yeah. Because you're just like, at night you're not paying attention. You're like, scratch my ankle till it's like blood. I'm like, am I bleeding?
Oh my
crap.
God.
Yeah.
You need some
whatever.
coconut oil,
Too
some
much
shea
information. I don't use. My wife gets on me constantly. I don't use any lotions of any kind, and it shows. Anyway, point being. That one benefit, I'll give this one benefit to the incredibly dry weather, is that you can pop popcorn and the next morning it's still good.
Oh yeah, I stand by that.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Anyway, so back to where I was. So I was in Lake Placid like a week and a half ago, and they have like some sort of, I don't know what the hell it's called, Popcorn R Us or whatever. It's a popcorn store, right? So they sell, popcorn, mainly caramel styles, whatever, but then they also sell popcorn that you can pop at home. And I bought something that I actually think is fun. Most things I don't think are fun, right? But and I'm not pushing them because I don't know them at all. But it was the where I wrote it down somewhere. Oh yeah, it's the. Have you heard of these people? Amish country popcorn. You heard of these?
No,
folks?
but I'm already excited.
Yeah. So here's what.
Was it good?
Well, here's what they sell, which is I think interesting. They sell so Whirly Pop is 4 ounces, right? Popcorn. That's what you're supposed to put in, 4 ounces roughly, which is 120 grams ish, right? So they sell like a sampler pack of 10 different kinds. And I'm like, I'm in. I've only popped half of them, but like right now, the winner, because my other sister-in-law, Ridge, she loves tiny things. I mean, everyone loves tiny things, right? Everyone likes tiny things a little bit, right? No? They have this popcorn called, I'm going to get this right, Ladyfinger Hulless popcorn that is tiny.
Like they're tiny kernels?
They're
What do you
tiny
mean?
kernels. They pop tiny. It's like you took popcorn and miniaturized it. They also, in this sampler pack, which is reasonably priced, in the sampler pack, they give you a sample of like you like mushroom popcorn. You know how like there's mushroom popcorn, which are the balls, which are good for caramel popcorn.
Okay.
I forget what the standard one that we have is called. And then they have a bunch of different Hulless kinds, a bunch of different kinds with different color on the outside, which of course you don't get in the kernel, but they say the flavors are different. So I'm grooving, kind of going through all like every other night. I'm popping a different popcorn, and it's kind of fun. But I don't pop with regular oil. I don't pop with butter. I pop with the butter flavored coconut oil, movie theater style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you use little under half of the weight of the popcorn in that. I use a Golden Barrel because it was the cheapest one. And so I put that in, and I add everyone's favorite popcorn salt, Flavacol. And like most of our listeners don't need, they know Flavacol. It's the one that comes in a milk carton, but it's like diacetyl, yellow, and salt, like fine salt.
Yeah.
But you add Flavacol to the popcorn when you're popping it. Don't add it afterwards. That is a nightmare. That is a situation where that's going to be too salty because it's so fine. It's going to stick in some places and not in others. So you add the Flavacol with it. But did you know, John? Did you know that and I can't read it because it's in some crazy color, rather, Gold Medal, who makes Flavacol, they make this stuff called glaze pop. Any of you ever heard of glaze pop?
No.
Or pop in glaze is the neutral one. Pop in glaze, get this. It is a mixture of sugar and lecithin that you can add directly to the popper before you pop it, and the popcorn comes out sugared and delicious.
Is it kettle adjacent?
Yes.
Okay.
And they make it with flavors. They make a caramel flavor, but they make the neutral one. I recommend going with the popping glaze, and you add the same amount as you add oil, so about half of it. They say not to add any salt, but of course I also add a little salt. Because, please. You know what I mean?
I was trying to make kettle corn in my Dutch oven, which,
Did it scorch a little bit?
It wasn't too bad, but it just wasn't that flavor, it wasn't close enough.
Here's something I will say also. I think people don't, how when you date, everyone, for some reason, everyone, thinks about rice, right? Who thinks about rice? They think about it. They're like, you need to open it and you need to let some of the steam come off. You need to fluff it up and, let it do its thing for a minute.
Yes.
Let it settle. Popcorn, same way. When it pops, you got to let some of that steam out. If you don't let the steam out, it's going to get,
So you're a wait till it's done to release the steam, as opposed to allowing the steam to release while it's popping.
Sometimes I'll do it, but then it jumps out at me. I don't want it to jump at me.
But only if you do a little portion.
A little bit?
Just a little. I
Yeah.
don't know.
But in other words, it's something to think about. It's something you need to think about is getting that steam off the popcorn so
Yes.
it's not
Soggy.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
No one wants that.
You want crisp.
Although there is a part of me who, from childhood, doesn't mind a little bit soggy if that sogginess is butter.
Buttery, yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, and the other thing I will say is that while I was in Lake Placid, for some reason, did you grow up with TV dinners?
No.
But you
I was
heard of
not
them?
allowed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I usually would get them not at my house, but at my grandparents' house because people my age, I'm 50 change, right? Our grandparents' generation, at least the people in our family, right? It's grandparents, they had the his and hers recliners. And then next to the his and hers recliners, which, by the way, there was one and then the other. They did not switch it, and you were not allowed to use that chair. And then right next to that was the four-pack in a thing of TV dinner trays that you could, and they had floral patterns on them, and then you could set those up next to the recliner, and that's where the TV dinner was served. And this is a real thing. Joe,
Yep.
Yeah, John. All right, so it's the TV dinner of note, right, was Swanson's Hungry Man.
Okay.
And,
I've seen this.
Yeah. And
Yes.
within Swanson's Hungry Man, the one that everyone remembers the name of, because there was the chicken, terrible, right? But Salisbury steak.
Yes.
Also terrible. Salisbury steak. Turns out Salisbury was a guy from New York, not from Salisbury, Connecticut, from New York, died in 1909. Was a crazy fad diet weirdo doctor, and so I was like, I'm gonna make Salisbury steak. So I made Salisbury steak, but this guy was a nut. He believed that almost all the problems we have in life are caused because we eat too many vegetables.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's like, human beings are not designed to eat only vegetables. We are designed to eat 1/3 vegetables only. So he would do stuff like he hired a bunch of dudes, all men. He hired a bunch of dudes in 1858 to hang with him for a month and just eat beans and coffee. Only beans and coffee. And he was like, they got messed up. And I'm like, yeah, because they're eating only beans and coffee. Then he hired another bunch of dudes to live with him. He paid them $30 a month, in case you wonder what the going wage in 1858
Bodily
was.
experimentation.
Yeah. To live with him too. But they got free beans. Anyway, he also hired another group of people. All they had, oatmeal and coffee with a little bit of butter in it. And he's like, guess what? They got messed up. Yeah. Humans, it turns out he didn't understand this whole variety thing. He's like, but when you serve them only, and I will quote exactly how he puts it because it is incredibly unappetizing. Eat the muscle pulp of lean beef made into cakes and broiled. That's a literal quote. Muscle pulp of beef. Now, if you saw that on a menu, John, what would happen?
Leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
But This pulp should be as free as possible from connective tissue or glue tissue, fat, and cartilage. He even gives a brand of meat chopper you should get. It's the American chopper, FYI. Answers. This was written in 1888. This book answers very well for separating the connective tissue, thus being driven. Blah blah blah. Blah, blah. I mean, here he gives an actual recipe previous to the chopping. Blah blah blah. You know, he doesn't want fat because he's a freaking weirdo. You know what I mean? Doesn't really want it to taste very good. And he also wants you to use very old cows, which is interesting. So it's probably a flavorful meat. He wants your cows to be 4 to 6 years old. And by the way, cow better than lamb. Cow, then lamb, then chicken, turkey last, in the ones he checked. The pulp should not be pressed together too firmly or it will taste livery. I don't think that's true. Do you think that's true? I don't think that's true.
I don't think anything that this person thinks.
Yeah. But, and here's what's interesting. He wants you to broil it, and then when cooked, put it on a hot plate and season it with butter, pepper, salt, and Worcestershire sauce. Mm-hmm. So today, to this day, so unlike graham crackers, which have all this sugar and everything in it, which, you know, Sylvester Graham would have been like, no, right? He actually put Worcestershire sauce in it, and Worcestershire sauce is in Salisbury steak to this day, and is one of the things that makes it different from meatloaf. He wouldn't necessarily, although he even says, I think, that you can serve it with a gravy. Yeah, and, you know, of course, I had to read it. There's also, of course, like a lot of good old-fashioned otherism and racism in it. For instance,
of course,
he's like, during the colonial era of Britain and India, he's like, yeah, the Indian soldiers are vegetarians, so they're just not as fast. So, you know, you have to give them a head start when they're walking. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it's the vegetarianism. You know, Dr. Salisbury. I'm sure that's what it is. It's not also, that you've never met one of these people in your life. You don't know what the hell's going on.
Was this person fit at all? Like,
I don't know. Like,
I hesitate to ask more questions.
So he then did a study during the Civil War of human soldiers living on biscuits. So I don't know whether he personally was healthy, but there were people who then picked up his crap and wrote like, I was cured by a Salisbury diet, blah, blah, blah. Especially in like England. It's really weird. You want to hear one more weird thing about Salisbury?
Why not?
Okay. So he realized at a certain point that maybe, even in the 1860s at this point, he realized maybe I shouldn't study people until they're messed up with like this one food diet. So he bought himself 1,000 pigs, and the entire back half of the book is how all the pigs get like, you know, and then he autopsies them. He's like, their guts are messed up when I fed them only, and then like pick your only thing that he fed them. Because he's like, you know, pigs are the close, he's right about this, I guess. He's like, pigs are very close to people in terms of how their bowels work. I'm like, okay. you know
all I can say is this has just all the makings of most of what is awful about, you know, American diet culture and so many other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my whole things, like even with the museum food and drink, like one of my whole things is that we think current people, we think we are smart. We are no smarter than anyone in the past. And the people in the future, unless they're augmented with artificial intelligence chips, aren't going to be smarter than we are now. So when you read someone in the past, you're like, everything they believed is crazy, right? But I'm like, everything I believe, probably in 30 years, 40 years, 100 years, people are going to think I'm crazy. We never look at ourselves with the same critical eye we look at other people. So, from the past. So I love reading things from the past that are patently absurd, but that have this veneer of, you know, we know the truth. We know the science.
I would disagree with you on that.
Well, you think people are smarter?
I think that wisdom from indigenous cultures has always stood the test of time, and most of what you're referencing is the result of ideology that comes from domination and capitalism. That's what I would say.
Well, I mean,
I think if you read Braiding Sweetgrass, that wisdom stands. If you read Salisbury,
I've not finished it. Yeah,
because it's so deep and it's so multi-layered, and it challenges so many core ideas that we are brought up believing are as true as air. So I think that, you know, that guy's trying to make a living.
I think there's danger in assuming that any group of people is pure or good.
I didn't say those words.
No, but I mean, they have a wisdom that we don't have. In other words, I'm sure every group of people has a wisdom that we lack. And I'm sure we have something that they lack. I don't think any of us is perfect. You know what I mean?
But I'm not talking about perfection. I'm talking about people who thrived in living in deep community and caretaking of the earth, stewards of land, not titans of industry, right? Their goals are completely different. So when you go to Mexico City and you go to the Anthropological Museum, or if you go to, Pueblo in New Mexico near Santa Fe, you're going to have a completely different idea of technology and what community and social caretaking looks like compared to somebody who is literally just pulling things out of nowhere and then being supported and celebrated for that because he lived in a society that was designed to oppress people. That is the culture from which he's coming from. Talking about,
I agree. But I'm just saying that I think everybody plays to the society that they have. Always.
Yeah.
Throughout time.
I just think you're being a little too generous to some folks.
Oh, you mean, I'm not saying there aren't people who are evil.
I'm not necessarily saying that guy's evil,
No, I
right?
think he's mistaken, clearly.
Yeah, but you're saying that no matter what period of time you look at, those people were doing the best they could. And I'm saying I think there are plenty of people that he could have spoken to, or plenty of cultures that could have been observed that had a very clear understanding that where he was going was the wrong direction. Like, it didn't take 1,000 pigs to figure that out.
Right.
The Lenape people could have told him that.
But what's interesting, and I don't think it's a function just of capitalism, because it happened many times in pre-industrial societies. I mean, even within, it happens all the time that crazy ideas take root and spread like wildfire, and every generation somebody is like, I'm going to come up with the current idea.
Yes.
Everyone else has been wrong.
But
I'm going to be right.
Usually in pursuit of overpowering someone else. That to me is the common thread.
Well, I was trying to think, like, how many places on Earth haven't been taken violently? Very few. Iceland. Like, the whole world is a history of violence, and it's a question of how you come to terms with the violence that you are currently benefiting from. Not, right? I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, what places haven't been taken violently? It's hard.
But not from a place of, we can't do anything about it, from a place of interrogating what the driving core beliefs are that sustain that violence, right?
Yeah. Well, especially if people are still benefiting or have detriment because of it, right? If it's totally in the past and everybody's dead, then it's like, okay. You know what I mean? Like the Celts. I don't know anything about the Celts. I don't even know why I brought them up. You know what I mean? But like...
Can't speak to Celtic culture.
Yeah. Because they got the hard taken over. You know what I mean? Anyway, whatever. Let's get to food.
We started so existentially. Yeah, I'm with it. Let's go.
Let's get to food. Well, here's what I want to ask you before I forget and don't get into it, because half the show is already gone and we've been talking about Dr. Salisbury and whether, whatever. Anyway.
It wasn't on my bingo card, but here we are.
So what's it like writing books with other people? How, like, because I've had other people before who are on who have written books, like, both for themselves and for other people, like Katie Parla or like, Joshua Davis Stein. And it's always interesting to me, especially when you're working, as you are, with people with very big personalities, right? They're coming to you because of your point of view, but then you have to kind of drop back a little bit. What's it like? How do you subsume yourself into what they want to portray, and then how do you get yourself into the work as well?
Yeah, that's a rich question. So first of all, I entered the space as a writer in food culture because I had things I wanted to say. And so I've always prioritized and felt very clear that anything with my name on it is a absolute reflection of what I am interested in or questions that I'm asking. So I've done a few of these collabs. Some stuff has my name on it, some stuff doesn't. There's been projects that I've been part of that kind of disappeared, went away. So it's always a miracle to me when, it's like TV development. When something actually airs, when something actually hits the shelf, it's like, you think of all the things that didn't get to that point, right?
Especially TV.
Yeah. So there's a lot more experience and exploration that happens behind the scenes than what is reflected, in terms of what's available to purchase today. And I am someone who is always working on my own work as well as collaborating, because I believe that one of the gifts I have is not just telling my own stories, but helping other people tell theirs. And that is an editorial lens that I bring to these projects. So, my early conversations with collaborators, and every project is different, is that I try to, be very clear that, you're not hiring a ghostwriter. You're not hiring somebody who is not visible, who is not outspoken. I have a public-facing presence. I'm actively doing my own thing. So if you're calling me, right, I'm not pitching you. You came to my inbox, you called me up, you inquired with me. That means that you want what I'm already doing. So you should not have an expectation that I'm going to, be like the Wizard of Oz behind the screen.
You don't have to be Daniel Day-Lewis on it. They're coming to you for a specific. You don't have to, become some other person.
No. So if you want to work with me, that's because you want to work with me. It's not because you want me to become something else. So that doesn't mean that I necessarily agree or that I'm a staunch advocate for everything that individual or that group is doing. But it does mean that for the purposes of that project, we have enough alignment whereby we can have this cross exchange, right? Because there's someone who has a story to tell. They have ideas about how they want to get there, maybe. They have certainly a brand that they're looking to, expand. And they're asking me to come in and help them do that as an expert in storytelling. So my approach is to first just understand, like, can we vibe, right? Can we? I've made the mistake of signing on to work with people where, because I saw what the potential was, I was attracted to that, and then got into it and realized, oh, like, this person they have no ideas, they have no interest, they have nothing to say. Seriously, like, the page is blank.
Wow.
Like,
and you don't want to fill it all in if it's supposed to be a collaboration.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten in trouble on projects in the past because I'm like, where's the concept? Like, where's the meat? And I've also sometimes given too much of myself, based on what the actual deliverables were, because I wanted so badly to have these greater narratives spoken. I mean, we're talking about things that, the books I've worked on, I know from my personal conversations with readers and the feedback that I've gotten directly and indirectly, that these are life-changing projects, and they are adding to, I feel like my responsibility as someone who makes books is to add to the conversation. Some of these books are sitting on the same shelf as Zora Neale Hurston, as W.E.B. Du Bois, as a wide range of storytellers and historians and holders of culture, right? So I don't treat that space. It's a physical slot that you don't have to be. Someone else can be there. So if you're there, what are you saying? I take that very seriously. So I do, have sometimes had challenges and problems with, bookmaking is a very long, arduous process.
Tell me about it.
You have to invest a lot before you see a return. And, frustratingly, with an effort to kind of get people under contract and get things moving and, just put stuff out there, there's sometimes this approach that, people miss some of the detailed nuances of agreeing to this work. You're going to have to add it to whatever it is you're already doing. And a lot of these folks are already very busy. So if you are coming to this idea thinking you're going to outsource these things to me and I'm going to do it by myself, you've got another thing coming. And this is always sometimes, a shocking conversation depending on where we are in the project. So I approach it as, you are, you've got this idea, you've got this story, and now I have to do like three things. I have to project manage it. I have to act as the editor before the editor. And I also have to act as the writer, which means that I'm also in some ways becoming an advocate for that person I'm collaborating with the publisher.
So you have to trust them. You have to feel for them and trust. You have to, if you're going to advocate for them, you have to feel something for them.
I have to feel something for what this project is trying to do. I also need their trust. And that is hard to establish if you have, say, already sold a book and you're already under deadline and now you got to scramble to find a co-writer. Like, you're trying to truncate a lot of emotional work in a very short period of time.
Because then it's too late. You said you're going to do it. You have to do it. Right?
Or they do. Like, if they're bringing me on after the fact, I try not to do projects like that anymore where, we're going to spend some time. It's like dating, like, because what used to happen is, like, you'd have a coffee, you'd have a meeting, and then it's like, let's get married. Yeah, sure. Let's be in business together for the next 3 years. Like, it's insane, So, of course, a lot of these collaborations fall apart. So I feel like it is an honor to be someone who can help convey this story to the world. I also take seriously acknowledging my credit and contribution to these projects because they are absolutely reflective of my my arsenal of skills.
So going on that, because I think it's also kind of like from the writing side, but also especially we get a lot of listeners who are culinary and beverage consultants, right? And I think it's not the same. It's not the same. But there's a similar situation where at the outset, there's a person with money, whether it's their own or a publisher's or whatever, but they have money and they're hiring you to do something. And there's this weird vacant period at the beginning where you're like, I don't really know if they understand what the deliverables are. I don't really know if they understand what I'm going to put into this, and I don't have the ability to do a bad job and still look at myself in the mirror and go to sleep at night. I feel a lot of people
you
feel
really
this way.
captured it.
Yeah. So like, without obviously naming names, it's it's got to be hard to, like, it's really kind of like, soul crushing is a weird way to put it, but I feel like a literal pressure sometimes with trying to figure out whether you want to take on these projects. It sounds like you have the same sort of thing. Yeah,
and it's taken years. I mean, one of the reasons, so now I'm like really good at it, but I had some very tough learnings. Really, it's hard to gauge timing. It's hard to schedule. You don't know how long it's going to take for something to gel and come together, especially if you're dealing with folks who have very sporadic availability, or they have come to the project because their agents or their editors have kind of sold them this idea that the writer's going to do everything, which happens a lot. It can be challenging to figure out, like, well, these projects are in meeting stages. These projects are in negotiation stages. These projects are in proposal development. These projects are actively under contract. Now this is going off to production. It's not my problem for a while. Okay, now the book's coming out. Now I have to market it. Every time I'm marketing a book, someone I'm working with behind the scenes thinks I'm ignoring their project. Like, it's a crazy thing. And then, these payments are also, getting into the nitty gritty, but like, these payments are assigned by what you deliver, not by how you work. So, shout out to the people who have full-time jobs, like, you get paid every week or 2 weeks, regardless of whether you turn something in. I get paid on delivery, but that only means that someone has to accept it and review it. So I have a project right now that I turned in last summer. I don't know when I'm going to get edits back. I don't know when that check is coming, right?
Right.
So it's an interesting hodgepodge because you can kind of wonder, you can kind of just be wondering how do I make this tapestry so that I can give projects the time that they deserve and know that they're going to be ebbs and flows. And this is in addition to, like you said, I work as a consultant to organizations, to brands. I'm working with institutions that are in arts and music and hospitality. So there are a lot of things that I'm doing on the strategy side, separate but related to my work as someone who's actually sitting in front of a pad of paper or a screen and putting copy together. So I continue to feel that it is a privilege, but I have struggled with that pressure. And I've sometimes failed, and it's been really, really. I mean, I'm a growth edge person, so I'm always reframing, exploring, trying to unpack, like, being accountable for what terms or what can I set up, what questions can I ask, what signals can I take from the first time so that I don't have to find myself in repetitive situations that are difficult to get out of or unpleasant. The one thing I would say is that you really have to be in it for the process because, I'm not the art director. Yep. I'm not the photographer. I'm not the designer. I don't choose the paper. I don't choose the typeface.
Neither will they let you, even if you want to.
So, like, all these things that a lot of times people will say, the book is beautiful. Well, I had nothing to do with that, right? Like,
Although, take it.
No, I take it, but it's also like, yes, and also it's an expression of the work that was done, right?
Yeah.
All those 60,000 words. One thing I wanted to note is that the books that we're talking about, the books that I do in collaboration with chefs, at least so far, the ones that are out, are they're narrative food culture books. They are also cookbooks, but they are very different than what preceded my work, which is that, mostly there were, you had maybe an introduction, you had some head notes. This is obviously the text that precedes the recipe. Usually those were very technique focused, and then you had the actual, here's how you make this thing. What my book started to do was say, we're going to tell a story, and we're going to allow the food to exist within the umbrella of the story. That means that you're not going to just open up to a chapter on salads. You're not just going to open up to a chapter on soups or desserts. These recipes are going to fit in the place where this narrative is taking you. And this was a hard thing now for some editors to really conceptualize, because they're like, they want to treat these books as how, they are references. But it was important to me, especially in dealing with food of the Black American conversation, or the diaspora more broadly, and even other cultures of books that I've worked on or plan to work on. These things have often been extracted from and kind of delivered piecemeal to the public over time. So we need to reframe things and give context to things and put things in an environment where you can understand the culture from which this recipe emerges. That to me was more important than deciding if this was going to be one or two teaspoons, right? So,
well, it's like in the Black Power Kitchen, the Ghetto Gastro Cookbook, it's all about the beginning is like, what does this even mean? What are we talking about? What, like the word ghetto coming, like the whole intro is like describing this, and then you go into, as you say, it's like there's interviews. It's like it's a point of view. But I wonder what it's like for you to write something like that is, from a culinary standpoint, the point of view, and it goes, all over the world in Harlem and whatever, but it's like, it's the point of view of a particular culinary collective, culinary fashion, music. But as opposed to like the, book you did before that, Rise with Marcus Samuelsson, where it's like so many people, it's about just kind of like the depth and density of people that you both want to kind of celebrate and bring to the fore.
Sure.
Is that different?
The experience of writing books like that, in some ways, I mean, Marcus is a big visionary. He's a big vision person, and he doesn't miss anything. But he's one to sometimes like have this big vision and not really think too much about what is that going to take to fulfill that, right? Like, you go do that, right? And in some ways that felt freeing, but in some ways it required me to take on a different level of leadership to that project. So when I first signed on, it was like, hey, you're just going to write these chapter openers and, to do some essays. And it was kind of like a low lift. By the end of the project, it was very clear, like, I had brought in a big kind of overhaul of the editorial lens and really worked closely with our editor, Mike Zerban, who's over at Hachette. Shout out to Mike, about, retooling this project so that it could be something that Marcus could own in terms of his own experience and what he was an expert in, and to also allow for us to bring visibility to people. Every single person we talk about in this book either has or should have their own projects, right?
And it's dozens of people.
And so like, especially the people who I wrote about, there are lots of people he's calling out to in the head notes. But in terms of those profiles, there's a lot of, each one of those people I spent time with, I knew personally, or I kind of curated that initial list. So that was a different style versus, with GG, it was more about taking this group of very distinct individuals who have been doing a lot of things in many different ways and, were pretty well known in their sphere, but had not had a cohesive brand story that they could, because they were consistently coming across people who couldn't understand what they were doing or what they were up to. So I took on the task of trying to articulate what that means. And that meant, spending a lot of time with them, observing them in action, getting to know them as individuals, getting to understand them as a business entity. And my contribution also is, on these projects is usually people come in with a particular view, and then I say, okay, yes, and what about, trying to stretch, right? Trying to push people a little further. In furtherance of their vision. So this is, some of that editorial lens coming through. Like when you turn in something as a writer, if you're working with an editor who is, I think, worthy, they should hopefully see what you're doing and then try to push you a bit further to get further at the truth. So I feel that was a big contribution that I brought to that project, not just in terms of outlining it and giving. They had the idea of Black Power Kitchen, but you need a lot of meat to add to those bones. So, it's to me, I feel like I'm a writer. I can write anything. When I started, I was very interested in, if you look closely, like I'm really interested in systems. I'm interested in cultural discourse. Food just happened to be one channel that I kept getting more access. And then I started to see there was a lot of depth here that wasn't necessarily visible to me when I first started out as a writer. So I had written about like the military. I'd written, I'd had a lot of interest, and I worked for IBM.
Did you grow up military? Are you military?
No. But I had a dear friend that joined the Marines, and it really shifted a lot of things at that time for me. So I was interested in kind of understanding that more. And as a writer, I feel like I'm always trying to write about things I'm trying to understand. So I worked for IBM for 7 years. I was a marketing writer for them. You wouldn't necessarily know that from my bio, right? So I think that sometimes it's like playing an instrument. Like there may be styles that you feel more, like there may be more of a heartfelt connection. But if you can play, you can play. So I'm a writer. I can write anything, and there will be projects coming, in future years that I hope will, further articulate that we don't have to stay siloed just because we've had success in certain areas, and that it's that cross genre skill that actually contributes to having such a clear voice. When you're reading a book that I contributed to.
Well, speaking of books you contributed to, even though I feel like now I'm going into standard Plugville, but I want you before I forget to plug the new book that's coming out in less than a month.
Yeah, Quail Creole with Nina Compton. She is.
I've never had her food. I've met her. I've never had her food.
I hope that is something that you put on your to-do list this year. I met Nina, maybe 7 years ago or so. She is, obviously the award-winning New Orleans-based St. Lucian chef of Compère Le Pain and Bywater American Bistro. I love her food. I love her. We've become dear friends over the years. And this book is a narrative cookbook that is going to take the reader through her development as a chef, starting in the incredibly beautiful, rich culture and country of St. Lucia. And we follow her through her time in Jamaica first, and then Miami, and then finally New Orleans, where she's been for over a decade, which she was introduced to as a participant on Top Chef. And that's really when she kind of crystallized all of these experiences that she'd had and funneled them into what became her first restaurant, So she's bedazzled with awards and always at festivals and special dinners and events and, wonderful things. But, I think in her story, you really get to see. So, something that I said after The Rise came out, because it was such, like you said, it was such a dense book. It was so far reaching. And again, the culture needed that, in my opinion. Also, the publishing industry needed that. You kind of had to prove that these stories were viable and that they had a rightful place, and not necessarily just by someone who was uber famous, right? And what I wanted to see was that you were now going to have more regional and more individually specific narratives emerge from this broad section. I'm kind of over throwing black on something as a way to dictate or project a particular point of view, right? I mean, I think it's an important identity marker, but it can mean a lot of different things. And I'm a little bit, fatigued of the trope of just throwing it in there to say that it means something. If you just look at book lists, you'll see like black this, black that. And it's like, okay, that's wonderful. We needed that. But also like, where else can we go? Because there are so many cultural and regional and ethnic nuances here. So what you're really seeing is, a lot of people have heard about St. Lucia, but they couldn't find it. If you were to give them a map of the Caribbean, they wouldn't be able to point it out. I
saw it on the map in the cover of the book down there.
Yeah. And you wouldn't necessarily know, unless you were from there, what makes something St. Lucian versus Jamaican, right? One of the things that Nina talks about in this book is how for her big city experience as a young cook was going to Montego Bay. The island was big, the sounds were big, the traffic was crazy. Like, the experience that a lot of people have coming right here to where we are at Rock Center. That was her experience in Montego Bay. That was her big city adventure. And, she's learning about things. She's learning about ingredients and techniques that they're not doing where she's from in Gros-Islet. So, she calls to her mother and says, hey, stop giving the ackee away. We can cook it. She's like, I'm learning all these things. So I think there's something to be said for her articulating what her canon was, right? She did go to culinary school and she did study those things. But what you really see in this book are these moments that shaped her understanding how diverse the Caribbean was, even as someone who is from there, and connecting to the diaspora in the South United States that is also mirroring that island culture and how that exchange has been happening for centuries. And so we do that in a really vibrant and beautiful way. Her sister, Fiona Compton, who also goes by Know Your Caribbean on Instagram, did the illustrations for each chapter. And our friend Kasimu Harris, who's a beautiful photographer in New Orleans, he has some work coming to Moment soon. He did the lifestyle photography. It's a truly beautiful book. It was one of the easiest and most seamless projects I've worked on. And I think it just came together very naturally, and it will be a beautiful collection.
And it's coming out March 1st, right?
April 1st.
April 1st. It's already March 1st, isn't it? Oh,
Practically.
My mind is fried. But something you said put a thing in my head. I have serious FOMO. Now, I don't ever go. The only Caribbean I've ever been to is, Cartagena's not really Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? But I've never been to
But it's in that Caribbean conversation. Cartagena is so different from the rest of Colombia.
Yeah. But I know it's I hate things that are nice. Kind of tropical paradise is not my thing. I burn real easy. Although I do like food a lot. But I don't think I'm ever going to have fresh ackee in my life. I've only ever had it from a can. I've never had fresh ackee.
I want you to dream bigger, Dave.
It's got to be different when it's not in a can, right?
Yeah. I think, any of these things, tamarind, soursop, vanilla.
Oh, soursop.
How about a bay leaf? Did you see that viral video where the subway takes where the woman was like, bay leaves are useless. They don't taste like anything.
I heard about it because people asked me, are bay leaves useless? I'm like, no, you're useless. You
know what I said, I've commented, I think 1,000 people have liked this comment. Literally that, the industrialization of our food here in the United States has really convinced people that things just taste bad or don't have meaning because we are so indoctrinated with this idea that, this is how it is. It's not like this in other parts of the world. So, bay leaves are actually incredibly fragrant and they make a huge difference in anything that they're part of. And in the islands, I think island living is tough living, but,
even if people love being tourists in those places, and I just can't. I don't know. Someday.
Yeah, we talk about that. We talk about, tourism too in this book as an expression of kind of an ongoing colonization project. First it was bananas. Now, you got to stay in these, fancy hotels that locals don't have access to. But there's a lot of that in there.
Do you have any good recent history books to read on American style food colonialism down there? Because I only read the old classics on on United Fruit and stuff like that. I don't know if there's any good recent scholarship because I love that kind of thing.
Focused in the Caribbean?
The Caribbean, South America, yeah.
I have not. I don't have a history focused title right now, but I would say that my friend Von Diaz has a book called Islas that is celebrating the cuisines of island cultures all over the world. And
is that the one that Matt told us we should buy, John?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
that she does a wonderful. I mean, Vaughn is a documentarian. You know, she's done all kinds of storytelling, rooted in collecting people's stories and histories. And while it is a recipe-focused book, it also is something that encompasses a bigger conversation of what these islands have been subjected to, particularly by large countries like ours that, you know, make choices that impact them every day. And so there's a lot there, I think.
All right, hold on one sec. I'm going to answer this question from Nick because it's been a couple of weeks, real quickly, and then we'll do our goodbyes. Nick wants the recipe for the tomato BS from Contra, the non-alcoholic drink. I will give it to you. It is, this isn't a random way, but 8 milliliters or 4 milliliters of grapefruit oleo. That's grapefruit oleo saccharum that we jack, I think, the acid in it, but it's made with grapefruit and grapefruit peel. Saline solution, 22.5, which is 3/4 of an ounce of polydextrose 50/50 syrup. Get the one from Monon's Pantry. 37.5 mils of clarified tomato juice. A half a milliliters, that's 10 drops of wormwood tincture, 3 grams in 200. So you boil the water, 200, 300, 3 grams of wormwood in that. Let it steep until it's dry. We call that cack at the bar. Theo and I do. 7.5 grams of marigold flower tincture, also 200. 15 mils of reduced cranberry cordial, which is my new magic ingredient. I'll give you that in a second. And 22.5 of rhubarb root tincture at 3/200. And so the way you make the cranberry cordial is you take 960 grams, which is almost a 32-ounce jar of unsweetened cranberry juice, which is a great ingredient from the past, 10 years. They didn't have that when I was growing up, unsweetened cranberry juice. And then you boil that down until there's only 307 grams of that cranberry juice left. And then you add 197 grams of sugar. And when you do that, you have a magic cordial that has exactly as much lime acidity as lime juice, but it's all cranberry acid, and it's 50 bricks. So you do that together, and boom, you get the magic cranberry cordial, and that's the magic ingredient in the tomato BS. Osayi, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you
I hope that we got. I never feel like I get to everything I need to get to with guests. Hopefully, you got. Well, hopefully you got what you wanted out of coming over here onto our show.
We've been trying to make this happen for a long time.
I know.
So I'm glad that we could do it. It feels appropriate.
Well, come back when the book comes out.
Yeah. Also, when my newsletter comes out.
Yeah, so we didn't even talk about that.
I know, it's fine.
And Black Futures is your Instagram. Black Futures, is that what it's called?
That's the title of a great book, though.
What's on your? What are those called? Those the short pieces on your website.
Oh, you're talking about my series.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a 4-part web series. It's Black Futures with Osayi Endolyn.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we didn't get to talk about this because I wanted to talk about on the last one on number 4. For the next time you come back about the professionalization of hospitality and how we're not all the same. Not all hospitality folk are the same folk, and so
so they think.
Well, but there's the view from inside and the view from outside, and they're both different. Anyway, we'll talk about it, I guess, next time. That's too much to unpack in the 0 seconds we have left. Thank you for coming on.